Okay, Scott, last night I was with the Sniper Hog Light people, shot about a 180-pound boar. And I want to emphasize boar because people thinking, all them boars, whenever you shoot them, you know, they ain't no good, just leave them lay. Well, that's all kind of wrong. You're wasting a lot of good meat. So what I'm going to end up doing, I got this Orion chest. I put 30 pounds of ice in there and about 1.5 gallons of water and 3 cups of salt. So I'm going to end up brining this boar for like 5 days. And went ahead and separated things out. Now this is just some of the trimmings that you're going to end up with whenever you're preparing your meat to grind for sausage or chili or whatever. You can see there's a little bit of blood in it. What this salt is going to do, some people are all into this dry aging and all that. Well, I'm not. I'm not one of that camp. I kept these shanks separate because there's a lot of tendons in there. I'm going to be doing some really fancy sausage, so I don't want that in there. And I also kept one of these shoulders intact. The other one I boned out. Now when you're breaking that hog down, there's glands that back by that hind quarter that's on the outside. Well, there's also glands inside here. And you see all this white stuff here? I'm going to trim all that out. That's whenever you got your holiday ham and you cut into the middle of it and you see some stuff in there that you can't identify. Well, that's what this is. So I cut it all out, but this little bit here so I could show you. And inside that hind quarter, you can see that pea-sized gland. Get that thing out of there too. You don't want any kind of glands in there. You want to get all that silver skin off of there because you want that salt to penetrate all this meat. Because what's going to end up happening is, I had a doctor explain this to me. What that salt does is it goes inside the red blood cells, and what that does is it explodes them. So every bit of blood that's in there is going to come out. You know, it's forced out by that salt, especially when you let it set 5 days like that. And whenever we go to the next stage of this, I'm going to show you a little trick. Everybody that's froze any kind of venison or whatever, whenever you thaw that package out, you see that blood in there. Well, when you brine it, all that blood, that's all going to go away. It's going to stay in that salt water. Now, if you had some really bloody meat, now this hog was neck shot, the bullet turned and it busted a shoulder. So there was a little bit of blood there. We trimmed all that off, but this water, you just keep adding ice to it, keep that meat submerged in there. And then, you know, whenever you're through with the process and you freeze that meat, well, you're not going to have all that blood come out. You ain't going to have that blood in your sausage. You ain't going to have it in your ground meat. You ain't going to have it in your roast because it's all coming out because of the salt in here. So you can dry age stuff if you want, but I ain't going to do it. This is the way Buddy T does things, and we'll show you why. Alright, next episode of this filming, we're going to show you what I do after it's through brining for 5 days. You see the size of this trimmings and them bones? Well, that's what that bullet ended up doing, is it broke that front leg bone. And bullets do crazy things whenever they go into there. Just because you shoot them in the neck, that don't mean that's where that bullet's going to end up. So that's an important step in breaking this down to where you got all the silver skin off of it and everything. Because that's when you're going to find your bone chips and maybe a bullet piece or something like that. And you don't want to run that through the grinder, I promise you. Okay, Scott, we're on day 4. We're going to have to go and cut this 5-day brine to 4 days because some stuff come up I got to go take care of. And I need to get this meat finished up. But after 4 days, now I know, you know, it had salt in it, so it makes it a lot colder. But you can see how the color of this water's changed. It's pulled all that blood out of there, and that salt is tenderizing it. So the next step is to drain this off and wash that meat real good, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do with it next. Okay, Scott, this is the next step I go through. I put that Arctic ice in there with some cookie sheet racks, and what we're going to do is we're going to go and add that meat back to it, because you want to let it go ahead and drip off. We're going to be processing this meat, getting ready to grind it or put it up like it is. You want to rinse it off really well after that brining process, because it's going to have some salt on it. You're going to want to remember whenever you're cooking this later on that there's going to be salt in this meat, so you're not going to have to add as much salt to your recipes. You can see how pretty and pink that meat turned out looking. This is something that we're going to be trimming off now. That salt jellied that stuff up. I had that all trimmed off. All that'll come off so that meat's ready to grind or do whatever you want with it. But we got to get this excess moisture off of it. So we're going to close this up now, and chest is all still good and cold from the brine. And these little pieces like that, they're kind of hard, difficult to fool with in there. So we're going to put them in this colander and put them in the refrigerator. All these shanks, that'll be packaged up separate by themselves, because I like to pressure cook those. Makes a really good dish, those pressure cooked flanks. And I don't care what people say about pressure cookers. That's one thing that you need to cook these things. Crock pots is one thing, but that pressure cooker sure does speed things up. Alright, we'll be coming back to you in a little bit. Okay, Scott, I washed this meat off, but the most important thing is, like right from the beginning, is to get that meat chilled down. I'm going to move kind of quick now, and I'll show you what I end up doing with it next. Okay, Scott, you can see we put that Arctic ice in here, and it's set about 12 hours, and that meat's actually frozen, or lightly frozen. It's not froze all the way, but this is what you want to be able to get the last of that silver skin off of there and do your final trimming before you vacuum seal it. So I think this shows everybody that Arctic Ice and Orion is a heck of a team together for processing your own meat. Now I'm going to break out the food saver, vacuum pack all this stuff up, and we're going to make our sausage a little bit later. Okay, Scott, believe it or not, I come up with a one-of-a-kind sausage. When I was down there in Uruguay, I got the idea from them peoples about adding onions, red and yellow bell peppers, smoked jalapenos, and And this one here, got something from the Louisiana sausage people. I always like that green onion sausage, so I put some green onion tops in here all cut up along with some mustard seed. Now this hog, it was so tough I had to grind that meat twice to get it where it was, you know, where you could go and eat it. And I like little chunks of meat in with my sausage, so I went and bought some pork chops, and I used that 12mm chili die, and I ground up some of that pork chops and put that in there so it changes the texture up a little bit. Now the other thing that happened with this big old pig, I mean, it was brined for 5 days to get all the blood out of him and everything. The meat turned out really good looking and all, but that meat, it was so dry whenever I tested it, I had to go down and get some of them bacon ends and grind that up. Now you don't want to get carried away using that bacon in there because it's really powerful. So if you do use it, you want to only put about 5 to 7% bacon to the pork or venison ratio. Otherwise you end up with a big greasy mess. But that little bit of bacon in there, them bacon ends, it's going to make this sausage really juicy. And another thing that I learned over the years was to add a little bit of breadcrumbs to hold that moisture in that meat too. So whenever you're using a meat mixer to mix in your seasonings and everything, you add a little bit of breadcrumbs. When that meat starts pulling away from the walls of it, then it's going to be the right consistency. Another thing you always want to do is pull yourself some little patties and fry them before you start stuffing it and all, and get carried away with your seasonings. That way you can add just a little bit at a time and you don't mess up the whole batch. Something else is soak them casings at least 30 minutes. This is natural hog casings in hot water, and it makes it easier to fool with. That's about all the things I can think of right now that went into this. We'll see what it looks like when it comes out of that Camp Chef smoker. Yeah, Scott, this time around I'm using these natural hog casings. You can see them smoked jalapeno chunks and that red bell pepper. Something else I did is whenever I cooked all those onions down and I froze them, then I put them in a pan and heated them up again and drained them to get all that extra moisture out of there. And you ain't going to be able to see this kind of stuff if you're using them collagen casings. So I'm going to make some little like brats out of this stuff, and that way you can showcase all the stuff that went into it. Okay, Scott, this is the first pure pork sausage I made in a while. You can see that color. Putting all them onions and peppers in there, it kind of reminds me, this is the one with the green onions of boudin without rice. It's a unique kind of sausage. I'm glad I made it, and then I'll be on to something else. Well, I don't know, but there's a chance I might win the Oscar Mayer Award for sausage this year. This is all some brand new stuff nobody ever thought of before, I don't think.